supremacy, the modern day CAIN, was making the nigger, you understand, of both the new nigger and the mule, and institute a new language. To institute a new language. So this language that niggas speak today is a new so-called language that was instituted by slave massa. You understand, that involves the new life's work of both. You know language, and this is what Willie Lynch said to his white listeners, his racist listeners. You know language is a peculiar institution. So language is not just something that we speak or we say when we go on vacation somewhere and we say, hi, how you doing? I like a cup of coffee or tea or something like that. But language is a peculiar institution. It's a strange type of institution. It's an institution. It leads to the heart of a people. Wonder why niggas are so heartless? Wonder why we're so confused? You understand, why we're at each other's so-called proverbial throats all the time? Where's our heart? You have heart for everybody else, because everybody else know their language. You understand? We don't have no heart for one another because we've lost that peculiar institution as our mother tongue, our mother language. Willie Lynch letter goes on to say, the more a foreigner, a foreigner, knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. So the more a foreigner knows about the language of another country. When we say such things like the word nice means ignorant, and you know, believe means a lie, you know, and we point out certain things etymologically about this. Some people say, oh, that's just semantics. You know what they mean. No, I don't know what you mean. You have to really describe. You can't just use a word. Now you got to use a description because I don't know what you mean. You can't use the word. Describe what that word means to you, and perhaps, you understand, we agree, and perhaps we don't. But the more that a foreigner knows about the language of another country, that's why they said in the next portion, therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, this is all in reference to the lost sheep, black folks back in the slave-making days. If the foreigner is an enemy of the country, to the extent that he knows the body of the language, the body, you know, when they say the body, you understand, the main body is your torso. Your appendages are like your arms and your legs and stuff like that, but your main body, the structure of your language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. Therefore, our language was stripped because the language is the link to the true culture. If you're into a way of life and you don't know the language of that way of life, I hate to inform you, but you're not into the culture, you know, like saying Rastas, and you don't know and seek to learn the Ethiopic language. You're into a cult because you're into abbreviation of that culture, and when you abbreviate the word culture, you get the word cult. You understand? So what white supremacy said right here is that the nigger is the foreigner. We must strip from the nigger, you understand, and the mule their language, their particular institute, the mother tongue. Then they went on to say, for example, if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets. And this is why niggas don't know about white supremacy. Don't really know what's going on. Well, why they're just learning a lot of these things that they're learning, because we don't know their language. We think we know their language, but we really don't know their language. That's when you go to court, most times you'll be best off if you unfortunately have to get a lawyer, because you don't understand that particular kind of language. And this is how the whole society, if you're in business, you have to get a good business partner who understands business language, law, legal language. You understand, even in science and technology and mechanics, and they have their own language, construction people, all of them got their own language. You understand? So if you take a slave and you teach him all about your language, he knows all your secrets, and then he is then no more a slave. This is what we say about miseducation. So you see, this is why we purposely were miseducated. For you can't fool him any longer if you know their language. This is why we keep advising you to get a good Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, you understand, and begin to study the etymology of some of the basic words that you use. Write down the words that you use. Take notes of the words you use or the words you hear often, and go look them up. Not just the 1, 2, 3, but in the brackets. Look up the etymology, what the words truly really mean. You understand? And being a fool is one of the basic ingredients of any incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. Look what they said. Being a fool is one of the basic ingredients of any incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. So in other words, they can only keep us enslaved if we're foolish. And we can only be fools if we really don't know their secrets, if we really don't know their language, so we really don't know what they're saying. And remember, even the American Indian taught us that. They said white man speak with forked tongue. You understand? Even the American Indian said that the white man, he says one thing, but it meant something else. The Indian even learned that his language did not mean the same thing that he assumed it to mean. But the nigger, well, you know, niggers are niggers. But let's go a little bit deeper into this controlled language. One more slide. I know it's a lot of reading right here, but you really have to read this for yourself and just break it down for yourself and really understand what's really being said and see how these things are basic principles for this so-called New World Order slave system today of Satan. You understand? It's the same foundation, except it's no longer limited just to the blacks or the lost sheep. Now it includes the whole world, and they want to go out there into space too and do this. My second part of this. Controlled language. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out, quote, our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that, quote, our crops, end quote, doesn't mean, quote, our crops, end quotes, and the slavery system would break down. For he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So if a slave thought that the master said, get out our crops, and the slave said, I'm going to get out our crops, and if he knows the language well, then our crops doesn't mean the master's crops, the master and his family's crops. It means the slave's crops too. He has a share in that because he knows what our means. So this was very significant then, and it's even more significant now, because now we got a whole bunch of educated fools that went to school, and this is probably the first time they even got acquainted with really etymology and how etymology truly works. You understand? Etymology truly works in legal spheres. You understand? It truly works in business spheres where contracts and negotiations and agreements are written down and like are codified with words. That's why I said, like, you have agreements that people just make with people and there's no paperwork. Those are more difficult to defend in courts of law, and a lot of people have lost because they trusted somebody. There was no paperwork, there was no sort of agreement, there was no meeting of the minds. You understand? That has been codified in a written document. You understand? So you have to be careful in setting up the new language. Willie Lynch and his kith and kin said, and they still say, for the slaves would soon be in your house, talking to you as, quote, man to man, end quote. And that is death to our economic system. Now, we don't want to go too far off a track right here, but since they said economic system, we got to think about this whole economic system. Let's think about Barack Obama's presidency began in a bad economic system. The whole economic system crashed, and we got our so-called first black president. Just like Dr. King said, they have given us a check, and you know, it's been returned to us insufficient funds. You understand? What has happened? Has the system really broken down? What's really going on? Do niggers know a little bit more about their language? Are niggers able to talk to the so-called white man, man to man? Is this really real? In addition, the definitions of words, and we highlighted this part here. In addition, the definition of words or terms are only a minute part of the process. So the definition of words or terms are only a minute part of the process. So we can go into definition of words and terms. It's only a minute part. What's the major part? Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. It's the values. And values go along with attitudes. The attitudes and the values are transported by communication, because as His Imperial Majesty even stated to us that language is the key of communication between man and man. Language is the key of culture. The key of the culture of the supremacy. The modern day CAIN was making the nigger, you understand, of both the new nigger and the mule, and institute a new language. To institute a new language. So this language that niggas speak today is a new so-called language that was instituted by slave massa. You understand, that involves the new life's work of both.